Hello, my name is Brad Bodnar-Chuck, and welcome to the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast, where we discuss everything hospitality, from the food on the plate to the teams that make it happen, and the community that drives this industry forward. On this podcast, we sit down and chat with the most exciting, inspiring, and innovative minds that make up one of the most dynamic industries that there is today. And today, I have the pleasure of being joined by none other than Christian Alvarez. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
In my own apartment.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. The cool thing about, as you're well aware with your plethora of audio equipment there, it's so nice when you can just pick up and go places. So
absolutely,
right now we are very mobile with the show, which is great. So as I say a lot to you guys listening, if you are listening on one of the audio platforms, iTunes or Spotify or Podbean, go over to YouTube and check out Christian's beautiful home. Thank you so much for having us here. So I like to start off the show and challenge myself to be a little bit different and not always rely on the same question. So I have one for you that is cheating a bit, but I'm going to go down the path anyway. So a few days ago on Facebook, I posted a question to see kind of where people's heads were at when it came to food and restaurants. And we'll just jump right into it here. So the question was, when you first step into a restaurant, what is the very first thing that you, Christian Alvarez, look for or notice the moment you step in?
I would say, firstly, because you don't always get this, just someone at the door ready to assist you, smiling. Obviously, the hospitality initially when you walk into a restaurant is imperative or important in my books, because it immediately puts you at ease. So that's sort of the first thing that I look for when entering a restaurant. And sadly, as I just mentioned, you don't always get that.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Why do you think we are, and it comes up for me a lot in this podcast, this show and my company is called Half a Dozen Hospitality. So the hospitality piece to me is so important. And I do feel as though we are slowly seeing that eaten away, pardon the pun. Why do you think that is? Why is that the reality now that hospitality, that itself, is kind of leaving the industry?
Well, for someone that's not necessarily within the industry, I don't want to be the guy that is, I mean, I'll voice my opinion, but I'm certainly no expert in this area. But it could be, on just a staff issue. Often I think it's a staff issue. It could be a pride issue. I think generally those are the two things that I would chalk that up. If someone is if there's a leader there within the restaurant and there's passionate people there, that won't happen for the most part. So I think it sort of starts and ends there.
Right. And I know for yourself, you've done some extensive traveling. Before we turn the mics on, we talked about a trip that you've taken, and we'll dive into that at some point. But when you travel around the world and you do eat in different cities, different countries, are you noticing the same things that we're experiencing here at home with this industry, or is it different in different places, very dependent on where you're at in the cultures?
It depends if you're talking about the world's best restaurants, where I've been fortunate enough to travel to many of those. I've made that something that's very important to me because I'm incredibly interested. But I mean, listen, I'm not from Spain, but my father's from Spain, and a lot of the cliches in Europe are accurate. You may wait 15 minutes to get served, or there's no water on the tables. So I think it is a cultural thing. But at the same time, when you go and dine at some of those best restaurants, you absolutely feel taken care of from the very beginning, and that's what makes those restaurants so special. It's not just about the chefs and the food. The hospitality is second to none in those environments, and you just feel taken care of, and that puts you at ease, like I said earlier. Yeah,
there's something about that. I just feel like I've asked this question, pardon me, to a lot of people, asking them what is or how do they themselves define hospitality, and so many of the answers, they may be articulated differently, or maybe they use different vocabulary, but it all comes down to like feeling like you're in someone's home.
For sure, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and that in itself is so simple. But then why is it lost so often in our industry? Like, treat someone like they are in your home. And then again, we could do probably 90 minutes on just that. But it is a challenge that I see with clients that I currently have, creating that culture, as you and I spoke about before we turned the mics on. And the industry is going through a massive change right now with how restaurants are showing up for the public.
Well, I think a lot of people that work in restaurant business, it could be a temporary thing. Obviously, you've got a lot of artists or people that are in school, and they just don't have the pride, unfortunately. And again, if if there's someone that's not managing them properly, or it may just be I mean, the restaurant business, being in a restaurant, it's chaotic. I have a little bit of experience with that, and it's sort of like sports, you know, it's go time. Let's go. The door's open, and there's so many different things and variables that can come up that just that moment in time, you may not have someone at the door. But for us coming in, we have this high expectation that, shit, someone better be there for me, right? Yeah. Otherwise, we immediately critique it. But I think the restaurant business is incredibly challenging to get it right. And more often than not, they do. But there's such a lofty expectation, I feel.
Yeah, it is. But I also feel like because the industry is so competitive, that you as the restaurant owner, and us as an industry, whether it be the city or the province or the country at a whole, we need to do a lot better job of stepping up and making that more common, in my opinion. But that's just me. Can we segue quickly? Did you have another point there? Sorry.
No, we can say. I was just going to say, because you have more experience within the industry, I think maybe your expectation would be higher. I try not to come with a huge expectation, just because, for me, again, having been in kitchens and spending time in kitchens, and also, you know, I've had family members and friends that work in the business. I know how difficult it is. That isn't to say that we can't hold it to a certain standard or ultimately have, you know, expect more from the business. But I think as a whole in Vancouver, the business does a pretty good job with hospitality. Again, comparing to, say, places in Europe and France and Spain, right, and everywhere else, I think we do a good job.
Right. I think the major difference between us and them is someone like yourself who's been there and is somewhat native to that area. You can help educate people and be like, no, this is just the way it is.
Sure.
Whereas I feel here, there's no real map, meaning what are we? Are we a hospitable industry or are we not? Whereas there, majority of them are just like kind of fend for yourself.
Right.
And we'll get to you when we get to you. Whereas here you have a bit of that. And then you have like the hyper hospitable, and then you know what I mean? So there's just this discrepancy of like, okay, what is the vibe when you fly to Vancouver and you go to our restaurants? What are you experiencing?
Yeah, that's more of an identity for me.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a lack of identity. And I think there probably is a lack of identity in Vancouver. We often hear that it's a great foodie city, or people talk about being foodies, and I've talked about this often with people. I don't think we are a great foodie city. And for me, that may be because we don't have a great reference point. And I'm sure we'll speak to this a little bit later, but when you, and I realize not everybody can do this nor want to do this, but when you go to some of the best restaurants in the world, your reference point changes. And I think that in Vancouver, we a lot of the chefs are holding back. Again, now I'm speaking more about the chefs in the restaurant, but I feel as though they might be holding back because they may not be accepted within our city, because people just don't understand what they do. And if you had a deeper reference, then maybe we could become a foodie city.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think we are on our way. Not to pump my own tires, but I think podcasts like this, and I'll shout out a couple other local podcasts like Track and Food, who are doing really good things to bring stories to the forefront and help people tell their stories and kind of communicate what they are trying to do, whether it be chefs or architects or designers, bartenders, waitresses, waiters. This is what, in my opinion, we need more context. And speaking about context, if I can segue, use the term foodie. And I'm looking across your room right now, and I see your shelves about to buckle from all of the weight of.
So I'm gonna guess it actually has buckled.
I'm gonna guess like 45,000 pages, 50,000 pages of strictly food. We have the Professional Chef, we have Mexico Cookbook, we have Yucatan, we have Toro Bravo, we have a very serious cookbook, we have Le Pigeon, we have Peru, we've got Acid Trip, we have Robuchon, we have I Love New York. I mean, this podcast generally runs about an hour, so I'll have to stop at some point. But
Acid Trip is a reference, of course, to acidity in food, by the way.
Yeah, it isn't just him tripping on acid and cooking.
that would be a fun cookbook. That would be a good one for sure.
A little bit messy. Yeah. So you use the term foodie. That's a term that I don't hear a lot, or haven't heard a lot in like the 2 years. I feel like it's almost like when vegan food changed to plant-based instead of vegan. So are you for lack of a better term, foodie? what and why you and food?
I mean, I hate the word. I hate using it. I hate calling myself a foodie, just because it can mean so many different things. And yeah, I'm a foodie. I also went to cooking school, which again we can maybe talk about later. But yes, I'm a foodie. To answer your question, yes. And what does food mean to me? That's a loaded question. I wouldn't even know where to start. I think what food sort of, when I got into food, it was because of Ferran Adria. I saw a documentary called Cooking in Progress, and this would have been probably, I don't know, 2012 or 13 or something like this. And being that I have a Spanish background, for some reason I just really connected with what he was doing. You know, he in Spain, he is as prized or celebrated as Salvador Dali or Picasso or Gaudi. And he was creating art with food. And that just really spoke to me. Having a real creative spirit, I was very drawn to him. And that was sort of my initial introduction to the world's best chefs, if you will. And that's why you see all those cookbooks. I mean, a lot of those cookbooks are from the best restaurants or best chefs in the world. And I was just immediately interested in what these guys were doing, because they were creating art with food. Food is the only art that uses all the potentially can use all of the senses. And so I just found that really exciting.
Yeah, something about food as well, and I don't know if I'm articulating this well enough, and feel free to interject if you agree or disagree, or perhaps you have a better vocabulary. But food is the only thing in this world that we all engage in. Like literally everyone in this world. What is it? How many billion people in the world right now?
Right.
7 point something.
Yeah,
right. Everyone associates with food. Some of us more than others. Some of us lead more abundant lives when it comes to food, but everyone needs food biologically.
Sure.
So it's the one thing where there's so much common ground. And when you talk about art, it is that, and the power of bringing people together over it is something that has always intrigued me, like to know. And like the power of a meal at a table with people is I don't think it can be beat as far as engaging and creating change and creating conversation and all of those things. I don't know of anything else, whether it is music or paintings or anything else that brings people together that powerfully.
I think music's darn close.
Yeah.
There's a
history there.
There's a vibration with music that really can obviously touches people. You know, there's something about music, that vibration that speaks to your soul. But again, it's only using potentially a few senses, right? Whereas food is all encompassing with all five senses, which I think for me personally, that's why it speaks to me. And food is a craft for many, and so it's not all about the art. And in fact, some chefs don't like when you call it an art. It's a craft. You know, it's many years of practice and repetition, which I totally understand. And I love a plate of pasta as much as I like dining at a Michelin star restaurant. They're just different to me. But the ones that really excite me are those chefs that are creating art, because it speaks to my creative side, right? My value system when it comes to artists.
How does food manifest itself today? All these books, your background, being from where you're from, how does food show up in your life today? I know you're activating some programs here locally with some chefs, some events that you do, but how else does food, and we can talk to that if you want to right now, but then how else does food manifest itself in your life day in and day out?
Well, I mean, I guess I would start with, on a local scene, what I've started with the Vancouver Chefs, and trying my best to contribute in some way, shape, or form to the industry that I respect so much. And to your point earlier, you know, just about being within the industry and asking me kind of to critique it, I do feel somewhat of an outsider, and I don't necessarily want to critique what's happening in the local community, because, you know, for me, it's I'm trying to do something that is positive, that celebrates Vancouver chefs and celebrates the people that are cooking food within our city. So, you know, to answer your question, I'm always thinking about food. I have a major admiration for chefs, and that's why I wanted to be part of the community. And there wasn't really, I mean, maybe there was, but I wasn't aware of sort of a network that was bringing chefs together And I saw that as an opportunity to maybe kind of dabble in that.
And what has been the response? And the reason I ask is because this comes up so much on this podcast when I do sit down with chefs, and I sit down with chefs quite often. They feel as though they're going back to what we were saying earlier about identity and kind of a North Star. There isn't one for the city as a whole. And this is from different chefs in the city. So it's coming from different sources, but it's the same message. So you creating this platform with these pop-up events, what has been the response, and has there been any challenges, wins? Like, what can you share in regards to that process?
Well, what's been really cool for me is getting chefs to work together that normally wouldn't.
Right.
And that isn't to do anything with their personalities, but just the most difficult part I see with chefs is they just don't have the time, right? They're so wrapped up in their restaurant, and the hours are generally very, very long, and there's no time for them to reach out to one another potentially. So for me, what's really gratifying is reaching out to chefs that I very much admire and then getting them to cook a cohesive menu and collaborate. For me, that's what's really rewarding, is I've got this chef that I admire, this chef, bringing them together. Now they're cooking a menu based off of one of my passions. And there, up until this point, I haven't really seen anything in Vancouver like this. I've seen collaborative dinners, but not so much with, say, 3 or 4 chefs, cooking a menu that's related to one of my favorite movies, like Pulp Fiction, for example. So to answer your question, I think, within the chef community, it's more of a time thing for them. They just don't have time to sort of create a union, if you will. And I've kind of became the middleman and able to kind of curate the dinner and allow them to work in their restaurant. And I only really need them for the one night, and that's it, right?
Right.
And to see the chefs come together, they always have such a blast in the kitchen. They're smiling. I purposely just do one seating with no more than 30 guests because I want it to be fun for them. I don't want them to feel as though it's a service within their own restaurant. So it's totally manageable. It's relaxed. They get some downtime even, right? But it's creating relationships that maybe they wouldn't have with one another.
Mm-hmm. So you're facilitating that, which again, I think we need more of in this city. And looking at something like, for those of you that aren't local, a place called Papina, which opened up on Granville Island, which is 4 chefs coming together to open up one restaurant, which again is super rare, because I find, again, this is not so much a critique but an observation that there are silos in this city, and we're not unlike other cities. There's silos set up that chefs don't speak or chefs don't share, and I think what you're creating is an awesome platform, people to come together in, like you said, a very relaxed environment, kind of flex their muscles a bit and show their skills, which is always fun, and probably do things that they maybe don't get to do or don't always do in their restaurants, which for any artist or craftsman, craftsperson, if you will, is so exciting. Whether you're cooking French generally in your restaurant and you go to do a barbecue or something, whatever it might be, like that's just so intriguing and so much fun.
That's exactly right. That's my hope anyways, that those chefs are able to do something that they normally wouldn't have an opportunity to do, and maybe are able to draw inspiration from that sort of event, and then maybe consider those type of things within their own restaurant. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But it allows them the freedom that they wouldn't have for the reasons that I said earlier about us not being a foodie city. I think a lot of chefs still hold back, and I don't want them to hold back. I want them to boundary push, go for it.
Yeah, exactly.
If people don't like it, they don't like it.
Yeah.
Cook the kind of food that you want to cook. Whatever this song or this movie or this scene inspires you to cook, mm-hmm. please just cook it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so I'm providing them the utmost freedom, if you will, mm-hmm. To get as creative as they want to be.
Yeah. It's so fun. And it's fun. I'm imagining for yourself to be that gateway for them to be like, look, you know what? Like, take off the harnesses and just go.
It's so much fun.
And if I can quickly, so we do with my business, we're doing 6 different dinners throughout this year, all profits going back to charity. And we executed our first dinner a few months ago, and the gentleman that cooked our first, curated and cooked the first meal, a guy by the name of Dan Larson, who used to work at La Quercia, one of the best Italian restaurants in town, in my opinion.
I agree.
So he now makes kombucha. That's his business.
Cool.
But he can throw down in the kitchen. And I can remember after he sent me like version 2 or version 3 of the menu, and the version that he had just sent me was missing an item. And I called him right away and I said, "Where is the beef tongue?" And he said, "I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, I really want to do it, but I'm not sure if people are gonna like it." I'm like, "Man, you know what? Cook it. Like, you want to cook it. You're so excited about it. You're so excited about how you're gonna prepare it. Like, just do it." And it ended up being one of the most beautiful dishes to look at the dinner. But people also went crazy over it, and it's because it was just him cooking what he wanted to cook. And like, those stories for me give me goosebumps, and that's why I do what I do, and that's why I'm sure you do what you do, is to be a part of that and get a bit of that high, if you will.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Again, I'm just curating it. I was just saying to Mikey Robbins from Annalena that, you know, for me, I get the most gratification from watching what they do and seeing the smiles on both the diners, the guests' faces, and the chefs. And I just sort of take a step back, and, you know, what I said to him was, I haven't really done anything here. I just work with really good people and experts in their field, from the front of the house and back of the house. You know, they're all experts. They all know what they're doing, and I take very little credit for it, other than a few kind of creative moments throughout the evening and my concepts. It's really all about them. So to what you were saying, I take a step back, and that's what speaks to me in my soul is watching them having a great time. And I just love that, and that's why I do it. It's a real passion project. There's very little money, obviously, that's made. You would know, from 24 guests, one seating, and we use pretty lavish ingredients. I don't hold back. If they want to use lobster. So right, yeah.
Very cool. I like that. I like that a lot. So can we talk about, we have one coming up? No? Can we talk about when it is? Can we talk about, you mentioned obviously the idea here, and again, feel free to interject, is with these dinners that Christian is facilitating, he takes inspiration from some source of media, whether it be music or film or photography, whatever it may be, that inspires you to kind of create the vibe, if you will, of the evening and of the menu, and then you allow for the chefs to play within those kind of, I don't want to say boundaries to be limited, but those kind of inspirations.
Yeah, for sure. There's always, I hate to use the word theme, but there's always a theme. For me, it's just more of an inspiration, something that's touched me in my life, and it is always around music or film, some type of art. And so, you know, thus far, right now might not be the best time to talk about it, but our first dinner was Michael Jackson's Thriller album. Right. So the food was all inspired from the album. Each chef cooked a course inspired by a song. So one of the songs, for example, Trevor Bird did Beat It, and Makoto Ono from Mac and Ming, you know, he did Human Nature and so forth. And, you know, we served some of the food on Michael Jackson Thriller CDs, and there was all these little touches along the way. And then we did a Pulp Fiction dinner, you know, Quentin Tarantino's movie. You can look over there. I'm a huge fan of Quentin
I saw it in the corner. Yeah,
and I thought that would be really fun. And the last one we did was Night at the Museum. So the food was inspired by works of art: Salvador Dali, Monet, Van Gogh. We did a Banksy, this sort of thing. So going from kind of fine art on the previous one, which I absolutely love, I wanted to kind of spin it on its head and do something entirely different. And so we're doing a Tupac and Biggie dinner.
Man, I'm such a massive Tupac fan. I have to say, if you asked me to choose right now one or the other, I'd have to go with Tupac, but I have so much respect for both of them. They're just amazing artists.
You know what's funny is I'm definitely more of a Tupac guy, but in preparation for this dinner, I've been listening to a bunch of the music and, you know, listening to lots of Biggie. And I love Biggie as well, of course. But it's always been Tupac, and kind of going back and listening to Biggie's discography, they're both such gems. I mean, they're just different, but they're equally unbelievable and talented, right?
Yeah, so much talent. Like the lyrics, the music, everything. It just, I don't know if this is poignant to mention, but Nipsey Hussle. Do you know Nipsey Hussle?
No.
Oh, no?
No.
You definitely want to get into Nipsey Hussle.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he was just shot and killed in LA yesterday, or the day before, and I saw someone had posted this morning on social media. Someone had created and rendered a beautiful painting of Biggie and Tupac seemingly in heaven. Oh, wow. And kind of like welcoming, because he really is he is on that level. how he writes and the music he creates, the art that he creates. He was just getting started. He was actually just nominated for album of the year or rap album of the year with the Grammys this year. So
no kidding. Yeah, no, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so check him out. Really talented.
This is what I love about music. There's just so much of it.
I know,
right?
It's crazy.
There's so much of it, and you just throughout your life you just find these different pockets.
Yeah.
And for me, I sort of dive pretty deep into one genre or whatever it may be, and then I go away from it, and so I just love being introduced to new music, whether it's underground or mainstream. But I kind of have tunnel vision sometimes with music, and so I have not heard of him, and I'll absolutely check it out.
It's funny, this morning I feel as though I was kind of in it, and we'll go off tangent here a bit, but it's our podcast, so we can do it. I felt like I was in a bit of a flow state with my work and where I was at, and the sun is out today in Vancouver, and it's just beautiful. And I was actually going to ask you, because I know that you do DJing as well, and you produce music, correct?
Yeah. I haven't since 2015, but I first started DJing in 2001 and had my first record release in 2003, and then started my own label, Delecto Recordings, in 2000.
Shout out Delecto.
Yeah, 2004.
Nice. I was going to ask you, we'll have to do it after, but I wanted you to like put on some music so we could like get in the right state. But
right.
But I was like a monkey with chicken with my head cut off, I should say, getting everything set up. But so let's go back, to the dinners that you'd be executing, because we do want to help promote that with this show today. So the theme, obviously, we just discussed, is definitely heavy in like 90s hip hop, early 2000s with Tupac and Biggie. So that'll be like the theme of what's going on. And we talked about Mikey Robbins from Annalena and There. Who else will be involved? When is it happening? Where is it happening? If tickets are still available, where can people get them?
So first, the chef lineup. It's Mikey Robbins, who I've been wanting to have cook at one of these events for a long time, but this was the first time that I approached him. From looking at Mikey from a distance, you can see that he's incredibly busy, and I didn't know if he would have the time for my little pop-up dinner, right? So I wanted to approach him after I had established a few dinners, and I'm so grateful to have him on board, because he was one of the first chefs. When I returned to Vancouver in 2015, I spent some time in Europe, and I saw what he was doing with Annalena, and it really kind of spoke to that creative cooking that I talked about earlier. You can see that he has a deep appreciation for art, even just the way that Annalena's set up, right? So he's cooking at the dinner. Eva Chin, who used to be the CDC, the chef de cuisine at Royal Dinette. I photographed her and her team, I guess last year at some point, but I learned so much about her. And one of the things that she mentioned was her love of hip hop. And just kind of speaking to her experience, I'd really like to big up her, because I don't think a lot of people are aware of who she is. She's now working at Boulevard under Alex.
Yeah.
And, she's worked for Dominic Crenn and foodies. Again, don't like to use that word, but foodies will know Dominic Crenn from Chef's Table. And she's worked at Mamo, which is one of the top restaurants in the world, top 50. So she's got a huge pedigree, and she's just a beast in the kitchen. So she was perfect, again, just because of her love of hip hop. And for me, when I'm reaching out to chefs and I go over the concept or the theme, I always want them to be a fan of whatever that may be. And if it's not authentic to them, then I'll move on to a different chef, because I don't want someone cooking Biggie and Tupac food if they're not Biggie and Tupac fans.
Like country music.
Like you're just not the right guy. Sorry,
right. Which is cool.
And I'm not a country guy, right? I'm not going to do a Garth Brooks dinner. So,
poor Garth.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey, and if you love Garth Brooks, you love Garth Brooks. It's just doesn't speak to me.
Yeah.
So, and then Dan McGee from Au Comptoir.
Nice.
So those are the three chefs, and he actually was the first person that I approached. He's come to 2 of my dinners, and so we had talked about collaborating for sure. And I know he's a huge Tupac fan. So when I brought that to him, he was, Matt, we got to do this. I'm totally on board. And then we kind of just filled in the roster.
That's so cool. With my dinners, I'm hyper focused on the vibe. Like when they actually like we're ready, like we're going,
for sure.
Like what the vibe is.
Yep.
So for me, music is huge. So when I curate my playlist, like there is a story that I'm trying to tell with the music. I'm trying to create an experience for the guests.
Absolutely, 100%.
So can I take a stab in the dark and guess that your playlist, one, is curated by you and only you, and two, this one is going to be, is it going to be everything Tupac and Biggie, or are you going to be like the Spotify channel where it's like Tupac radio, where there's like some different influences from Tupac or people that have been inspired by Tupac? Will there be some J. Cole on there, or is it like strictly Biggie and Tupac?
I've thought about doing hip hop dinners, and because you can just go East Coast, West Coast, for example, and then there's so much more you could do. But this dinner in particular it's really just about Biggie and Tupac, and they've created enough music. Like there's more than enough music.
God,
we won't be able to play all their music clearly.
Yeah.
So no, I don't want any other reference. Although it's a great idea, for me it is just about Biggie and Tupac. And yes, I will curate the playlist for sure. Music is always a big theme in the dinners. They go hand in hand for me. So the Michael Jackson one, clearly. Pulp Fiction. I mean, not only is Pulp Fiction one of the greatest movies in my opinion of all time, but it's one of the greatest soundtracks to a film. And all of his films, all of his films' music is such a big part of those iconic scenes. He just has a knack for picking the right song in a scene that's so memorable, right?
Yeah.
So, and then the last one actually about the night at the museum, I thought, well, what am I going to do with the music? Because the music it plays such a big part, as I said. And so I actually played music from musicians who also painted or drew.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was really, really neat. John Lennon and David Bowie and
very cool.
Bob Dylan and this sort of thing. So that was kind of the tie into the art.
Right.
In this particular case, it's going to be Biggie and Tupac.
And are we? Are we listening to digital music, or are we listening to vinyl, or how are you?
No, I mean it'll just be digital.
Cool.
For me, it really starts with the food and the wine, and at the end of the day, I don't think the average person maybe has a deep appreciation for vinyl or that type of thing. And I absolutely considered having a DJ at the event, but I really want it to be more about the chefs.
Yeah, for
right.
Sure.
And people will appreciate the music playing, but it's definitely about the food.
Cool. So people do want to find out about the dinner. How do they do that?
Instagram, Vancouver Chefs, at Vancouver Chefs, and the website, www.vancouverchefsofficial.com.
Nice. And they go on sale when?
So it's what's funny is
there is no sale because they're already sold.
Yeah, well, it's just the nature of the event. Again, it's 24 to 30 guests, and what I've done is I release the information on Instagram, and for those that sign up to the mailing list, I will allow them the opportunity to first purchase tickets at a particular date and time. And I've been really fortunate with the support, and it sells out within minutes. So that's kind of working for me, and I'll continue to do that. And again, I don't do multiple seatings and that type of thing because the chefs are volunteering their time and they're so busy. And I wish that I could include more people in the dinners. I would love to do it time and time again, but it's just really not about that.
Yeah, and I also think when you do it too often, it kind of loses its, like, je ne sais quoi a little bit. It loses that allure.
For sure.
And then it gets a little, it's like
anything, right? It gets stale, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think there could be a way to kind of hang on to that infancy, that kind of innocent vibe that a dinner like that may have. But you'd have to then look at like different cities. Yeah. Like take it to Portland, take it to Seattle, take it to LA, which would be kind of cool, actually.
I've thought of all those things. Again, it's time permitted, right? But it would be difficult because I'm not, at this point anyways, I'm not part of those communities, and for me it's more about building this community.
Right. Let's talk about travel a bit. Obviously it's a big part of what you do, and I'm assuming, again, don't make assumptions, but I'm gonna for a second.
Sure.
I'm assuming when you do travel, a big motivation where you go, why you go is food. And you mentioned Europe, so you spent some time over there. Can we talk about what brought you there, what motivated you to pick the places you went, and any highlights that you wanted to share with the listeners?
Sure. I mean, yeah, I've been to many restaurants in Europe, and you can see from my West End apartment here, it's important to me to travel to those restaurants, and I know it's not for everybody, but I very much enjoy it. And so yeah, I've gone to El Salvador de Can Roca and just outside Barcelona, which was #1 in the world, and gone to Alinea in Chicago and Noma in Copenhagen, sort of just to name a few. But in 2015, I went to cooking school here at Northwestern Culinary Academy.
Yeah.
And just after that, I made it a goal of mine. It was myself and my partner at the time. We went to live in Spain for 6 months. Her and I had made it a goal to live in Europe and travel in Europe. So we spent 6 months in Spain and in Croatia.
Wow.
And it was just incredible. And the reason we chose Girona, it was because of El Solar con Roca. It was directly related to living in the city where the #1 restaurant in the world was, and see what that was all about, and kind of celebrate our trip by dining there.
Mm-hmm.
And then being so close to Barcelona, Albert Adria and Ferran Adria, who I said was the reason why I got into sort of elevated cooking. We had to try tickets, and El Bulli, of course, had closed.
Yeah.
But tickets and Albert Adria's other additional restaurants, I mean, we tried them time and time again, right? Just over and over, and just incredible. So, when I travel, I absolutely will travel for food. But it's the thing about that is people, I think, sometimes get the wrong idea. Sure, I love to dine at those restaurants, but they bring you to places maybe that you normally wouldn't go, and then of course, inevitably you see so much more, all the art and the culture. It's just a gateway. Food is just a gateway to to a country's culture and history, right?
Yeah.
And that's really why I love it. My next trip, I'm going to Mexico City and Oaxaca.
Oh, beautiful.
And I've wanted to go to Mexico City for a long time, but with Pujol and Quintanel and Oaxaca being the culinary mecca of Mexico with the mole, I mean, that gets me on the plane to those cities, but I'm going to learn so much more about the culture and those places of the world, right?
It's like the mole is like your gateway drug to all the other amazing drugs.
Yeah,
that's so cool. I think Mexico
funny.
City in Mexico, Latin America is like the next thing. It's already kind of starting to percolate a bit,
big time.
but I feel like it's like the next Copenhagen, Noma. Like I feel like that there's that talent. The terroir, what it produces there is just incredible. What you can do. Sorry, go ahead.
Have you heard of Central in Lima?
Yeah.
So his menu is basically created by the altitude,
By the terroir,
yeah, which is just amazing, right?
Yeah. So it's
for the Amazon. Yeah, it's really, really neat. And again, I mean, that level of creativity is what speaks to me about those places.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about the food; it's so much deeper for those guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I actually haven't gone there, and that's high on the list. Lima and Peru.
Yeah, it's funny. When I sat down with, and I know you saw it on social media, my interview with Christian Alvarez.
Yeah,
he was talking about the talent there, and then I sat down with, oh my God, I'm losing her mind. I'm losing her name right now. Just wrote Vancouver Eats
the cookbook.
Yeah,
I forget her.
Joanne Sesvari.
Okay.
So Joanne was saying the sushi in Peru was amazing, and for me that was just so counterintuitive. I don't know why I didn't even think about their lay of the land and their association with the ocean, but she was saying when she visited, it was some of the best sushi that she had ever had.
Yeah, it's called Nikkei cuisine.
Oh, okay.
In fact, Jefferson Mayoshimi, I forget. I'm butchering that.
Masayoshi.
Yes. They did a collaborative dinner, and they showcased Nikkei because of the history with
So is Nikkei, sorry, is it the style?
Yeah, it's the style. Right. Yeah. So it really makes sense to your point with all the beautiful fish there and that type of thing. But a lot of people aren't aware of Nikkei cuisine and that it even exists. That there's a tie-in between Japan and Peru. So it's incredible.
I feel like that's a meal that I would like to extend an offer to you. I think you and I should go at some point this summer to Masayoshi. It's been on my list, and I haven't been. It's literally up the street from me. And there's no reason for me not to go. It is a very, very different. For those of you that don't know, check them out on social media. The food is truly art. It is a very small room in Vancouver, and I think it might even be like 10 or 12 seats, maybe 20 max. So very difficult to get into, but very high level, very, very well curated, very well executed food.
I'm embarrassed I haven't gone. It's just one of those things, right? Just finding the time, and there's so many restaurants, but I've been meaning to go for quite a while, so I will take you up on that offer.
Let's do it. Let's give ourselves 60 days.
Sure. Done. Yeah, done.
Okay, cool.
I would love to do that.
Done. You heard it here. Witnesses. This podcast, Christian, is called the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast. So I have for you two questions. that I ask every single guest, from Jefferson Alvarez to, oh, go ahead.
Can I just say one thing
Go.
before you ask that?
Yeah.
Because I just Vancouver Chefs and what I'm doing, it's really about the chefs. So there's just one thing that we haven't touched on that I absolutely have to bring up.
Please.
And when I started this Vancouver Chefs project, there was a painter by the name of Jeff Martin, who's Australian. And I saw a documentary of his while traveling. And it was about him having a passion for food and many of the top restaurants in the world. And what he did is he created a series where he would sit in the corner of a kitchen, and he did Noma, he did 11 Madison Park, Per Se, he did many of the world's best restaurants, and he would paint them. And the series was called Back of the House. So it was just paying respect to chefs because that was an interest of his. And when I saw that, I thought to myself, well, I had gone to culinary school, I had worked briefly in kitchens, but I knew I didn't want to be a chef working 14-hour days, but I wanted to contribute somehow when I got back to Canada and home. And so having built a few relationships with Trevor Bird or Makoto, and I thought when I get back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask these guys if I can, sit in the corner of their kitchen, so to speak. Martin.
Yeah.
But my medium will be photography because I have an interest in photography. So I did that, and I created a series called Life on the Line. And that was the reason I created Vancouver Chefs. It wasn't about the pop-up dinners. The pop-up dinners came afterwards. For me, it was about sharing the faces of all the chefs cooking the food in the city. We all take photos of food, and myself included. I mean, I love it. But that said, no one really knew who was cooking the food. Mm-hmm. And who are these people, right? They're very ambitious. They work incredibly long hours for often not a lot of money. And so when the chefs allowed me to do that, that's kind of when I had the following, and I was able to kind of grow the following because I feel as though it spoke to people within the industry and the food world in Vancouver. Because for me, I will photograph the garde manger all the way up to the executive chef, and I want to pay respect to all of these different people, men and women, that are cooking in a very, very difficult business. And so, yeah, that's why it's called Vancouver Chefs. And with Life on the Line, I got to meet a lot of different chefs at many of the best restaurants, and then I had the idea to do the pop-up dinners.
Right.
But initially, it was all about sharing the stories behind the people that are cooking, the best food in our city. Yeah,
no, I appreciate that. I appreciate you kind of flagging that before we begin to go through the end of this conversation. But that's kind of my motivation with this podcast as well, is to create that platform, people to tell their stories. Obviously, the story looks a bit different because it's audio and video, whereas yours are still photos. But it is so important for these stories to be told and these people to be held up and celebrated, because it is, like I say, again, far too often a very thankless industry. And a lot of times people are going to restaurants, to your point, and taking a photo of the food. But that's where the story starts and ends. But there's far too many missing links that it's so nice to hear that you are making it a priority to do your best to help tell.
Yeah, and again, for me, it's not just about the head chef or the executive chef, because often those people aren't even doing the cooking anymore, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, it's their concept, their idea, don't get me wrong, and they've come up the ranks themselves. But, when I take the photography or the photos of these chefs, I also will share something about them. I'll interview them, and many of them have different backgrounds. Obviously, some have come from university and they have a degree, but food spoke to them. Mm-hmm. Some of them came because their grandma was a cook and inspired them to cook. So that's kind of what I'm trying to show on Vancouver Chefs.
Yeah, actually, CBC just did a really amazing documentary, a mini doc, 3 weeks ago. The name escapes me. I'll put it in the show notes, where they actually highlighted 3 dishwashers from Montreal.
Oh, very cool.
I don't know if you've seen it, but it's so well done. And again, it's just that storyline that is not told often enough. And if you are dining in a restaurant, as you walk your way to the bathroom at any point, just poke your head into that kitchen and just look at the young man or young woman who is, I guarantee you, hustling their, if I may, ass off in that dish pit. And talk about thankless. like those people as well, like they deserve such celebration and admiration, because that job is not for everyone, and again, hyper thankless.
It's so funny that you say that, because I posted that at some point on one of the photos. And I had mentioned that, if you've had a great dining experience, just go say hi to the chef or the cook. Just say, guys, on the way out, say, guys, that was an unbelievable meal. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Because they don't hear that enough. They get negative Yelp reviews, and people, here's your top 10 restaurants in this order, and it's all about ranking and this sort of thing. And just go say hi to them and say, that was a fantastic meal. You made my evening. Thank you.
I think,
and that will mean a lot to those chefs, I can assure you.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that means so much. Like you said, it's not done often enough. But I also think that again is an issue with our food culture here, and maybe nationally. I don't know, but I'm assuming nationally, like that just isn't told. Like, yeah, if you enjoy the meal, like, go say hey to the chef and go say hey to the dishwasher. Be like, you guys just dominated that meal. That was way above our expectations. That's going to make them feel so good. And that's going to fuel them to do it again tomorrow. I don't know how you feel after you do your dinners, where again, like you aren't the one cooking the meal, but you have a lot on the line. You want to make sure that everyone is experiencing the best evening they can experience, and when that night is done, I'm assuming you're exhausted.
Oh yeah,
and that's
I'm a mess,
and that's one night. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
These guys and girls do it again the next day, and then again the next day, and then again the next day. So you can understand. And again, we can go down a big long hole with this one, but the burnout, quote unquote burnout in the industry, why it is so high, and why the turnover is so high, because it's like being a professional athlete 7 days a week, 52 weeks of the year. 300, you know what I mean? It's just the demand is insane.
It's so intense.
Yeah.
People don't appreciate the intensity. I worked in kitchens for 3 months and I was done.
Yeah.
I mean, and I love food and love to cook.
Right.
But it's such a grind.
Yeah.
It's so challenging. I don't know how they do it. I really don't.
It's so challenging, but at the same time, it's so rewarding. And I think that is where we need to be focusing on as an industry, and then as a community around the industry is celebrating through things like your Vancouver Chefs on the line. Those things need to be raised more and put in people's faces, because that tells the story that isn't being told and needs to be, because these people are doing a crazy important thing to our cities and our cultures and our communities. So
well said.
Shout out to all of you that are cutting yourselves, burning yourselves, and washing dishes relentlessly. Well done. So segue again. I like that you knew where we were going, so you cut me off and got your spiel in, which is great. I'm glad that you did that. Half a Dozen Hospitality is the name of the podcast. So I have for you, sir, 2 questions that I ask every single guest. The first one is the half a dozen have tos. So 1 to 6 things you've experienced in your life that you feel like our listeners have to experience, whether it be food related or not. A book you've read, probably a cookbook, a meal you've eaten, a piece of art you've stared at, a documentary you've watched, an album you listened to. 1 to 6 things you feel like our listeners have to do.
Well, I mean, your audience, I would imagine, is a lot of industry people, foodies, chefs, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I would say what we were talking about earlier in terms of a reference point. I think that if you can make it happen for yourself, and you love this industry, and you want to see the best of the best, so to speak, jump on a plane and go to one of those restaurants that are in the top 50 in the world. And there's a difference too between, say, a Michelin. This will sound really pretentious, but there's a difference between like a 1-star Michelin restaurant and sort of those top 50 restaurants. They're just on another level. They tap into your childhood nostalgia. They can take you places. And speaking what I was speaking about earlier about the 5 senses, it's all encompassing, and it's like going to see an incredible play or a sporting event or whatever touches and moves you. They'll draw that out of you, I assure you. Yeah. And I think the more people that within the industry, people that love food and wine and cooking, that kind of thing. If you go and travel and you experience one of those restaurants, it gives you a different appreciation and reference point, and you may be able then to see what some of the chefs in our city are attempting to do. And you might be more open to those types of experience rather than just going to chain restaurants. Or you'll that reference point will help grow the community in Vancouver, I believe. Mm-hmm. That's one. And two, I'm more of a quality over quantity type of person, so I'll cap it at two. And, you know, the other one thing that I've done in my life, I feel as though, is that I've really sort of been open to pursuing my passions and following my passions, and not necessarily being result driven. You know, the whole, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I get that's a question, but I think we're sort of obsessed with the result of things, and that may actually hinder people from following their passions. So I would say to a wider audience, you know, if you have an idea, or if something is speaking to you, try not to ignore it, and just go for it and see where it takes you. Because for me, those are that's the point of life for me, is following your passion. If you identify something within you, go for it, and don't be so fixated on the result. And generally, when you do something for passion, you're going to get something out of that situation, no matter what that result is. You're going to grow from it. You're going to be proud of those moments. You just never know where it can take you. Yeah. So, yeah.
I like that, man. Very, very well said.
Thank you.
The next one is the half a dozen haven't yet. So it seems like you've ticked a lot of boxes in your life, but I'm assuming there's still some things that you want to accomplish and want to get done. So 1 to 6 things that you haven't done yet.
I haven't traveled where I've been, maybe, for a lack of a better word, scared or put into a situation, where I felt fear, maybe, if you will.
Okay.
I'm very comfortable with traveling, and whether I'm traveling with someone or traveling on my own, but I'd like to put myself in that situation. And I don't know where that would be necessarily, but I'd love to maybe jump on a plane and go somewhere in India, let's say.
Right. There's some spots in Brazil that could freak you out.
Yeah, see what I mean? And I've traveled a lot, but it's predominantly through Europe.
Right.
So I haven't gone to South America, you know, I haven't gone to Africa, I haven't gone to Asia. And I know that I will go to some of these places, but yeah, I'd like to be scared.
Yeah.
I want to be challenged and put into situations that I haven't yet when it comes to traveling, for sure.
Yeah, for me, I don't necessarily associate it with scared or fear, but just discomfort, uncomfort.
Yeah, exactly. That's much better way of putting it. Just being out of my comfort zone is what I should have said.
No, that works. That works. But however you want to articulate. But for me, man, that resonates with me 100%. There's so much, and I say it again all the time, and my friends are probably like, "Man, stop saying it," but I believe it to the marrow of my bones.
Your core,
Like, get uncomfortable. Like, take a cold shower for 5 minutes. Like, don't come out of the shower. Like, stay in the shower for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, just see what you can do and see how you can grow when things are, like, with my own business, things are really uncomfortable. But what I'm learning through that process is about myself and about what I can do and what I can actually, like, deal with is incredible and so valuable to me. It's easy to always eat the same food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more.
Try to eat something where you don't know what it is in a country where you don't speak the language and they just brought it to you.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I did the podcast, for example, today. I've got a book over there by Susan Cain. It's called Quiet, and it's about introverts.
Oh,
and
okay.
So, you know, I DJ'd and I'm doing these parties. I'm a real introvert.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So putting myself in these sort of situations, I think, being uncomfortable, you're inevitably going to grow from those situations, right?
Yeah.
You know, how can someone be a DJ and be introverted? Well, I'm up there with my headphones and I'm not making
It's
eye contact with anybody. I'm doing my thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's how it started. And these pop-up dinners, same kind of thing. I'm taking photos of the chefs and I'm letting front of the house deal with it. But I have to address the room and speak to the room, and I'm challenging myself in that way. So yeah, anytime you're uncomfortable, usually there's going to be a growth opportunity there for you, which is great.
For someone who's an introvert, man, you speak really, really well and you articulate your thoughts well. So kudos to you in that book. What's it called again?
Quiet.
By
Susan Cain.
Susan Cain.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah.
I feel like we could literally do another 2 hours and chatting about all things food and all things industry and all things inspiration. Is there any other messages that you wanted to share today with myself and with listeners? You have right now the ears of, last time I checked, 10,000 people worldwide. So
not so much. Just be tolerant of the people that are cooking your food, and maybe before you go ahead and critique them, think about all the hours and time and dedication and loyalty these people have given up from, to kind of make your experience what it is, and just maybe be a bit more tolerant before you judge and critique. And I think that that's why I started the Vancouver Chefs. Is I just have so much admiration for what they do. I wish I could have cut it in that sense, right? The reason why I quit my job at the time and went to cooking school is I had this dream of maybe being a chef. But I'm glad that I am where I am and contributing the way that I'm contributing. But yeah, I would just say that just take it easy on those guys, and on the way out, to your point earlier, just go say, hey, if it was a good meal, go mention it to them, and I think that'll go a long way.
Yeah, well said. Well, I want to take a moment and celebrate you, sir, for doing something, like I've said, is extremely important, and I'm happy to now have shared an hour and a bit with you to better understand what you do and why you do what you do. And things like Vancouver Chefs and things like Life on the Line are very, very important, and we need more conversations like this one to be had, whether it be through podcasts or through Instagram profiles or through pop-up dinners. This is what's going to allow for our industry to flourish and to exist for many, many, many years. And shout out to you for, again, shedding that skin of an introvert, and 1, coming on the podcast today, 2, putting on events, and 3, getting the nerve to DJ whenever you do DJ. But yeah, man, shout out to you and what you do. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad to now call you a friend and welcome you to the podcast circle.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for what you do, because without this outlet, I wouldn't be able to tell and share my story. So you're absolutely contributing in your own way, more so than me, that's for sure. And I thank you very much.
No, my pleasure. Before we let you go officially, we've talked about a few different things, but if people want to reach out to either Vancouver Chefs, they want to get on that list, or if they want to engage with Life on the Line, how best they get in touch with you or those 2 platforms?
Yeah, so the best one would be Instagram, at Vancouver Chefs. The website, www.vancouverchefsofficial.com. They can join the mailing list. If you're a restaurant and you'd like me to photograph the kitchen, by all means, please reach out to me, and I'll. It's a passion project. I do it in my spare time, as I've said, so I'll do my best to get to you when I can. And for sure, I would love to be, part of their restaurant and their team, and providing, an outlet for those guys to tell their story.
Is there a potential a few years from now for me to be having a conversation with someone with almost broken bookshelves with your book on the shelf?
It's funny that you say that. It's I mean, I was going to mention that, actually. That would definitely be one of my goals, something that I haven't done, that I've definitely considered and thought about. I would love to have a cookbook that is dedicated to Vancouver chefs, that tells more of their story. Sure, there would be some recipes in there, but more so features them. So yeah, that is absolutely a goal of mine.
All right. When can we expect that?
I have no idea.
We will do round 2 when Christian's on his book tour internationally for Vancouver Chefs official cookbook, which of course will highlight all the chefs, and he'll be behind the lens making it happen. I want to thank you guys for tuning in as you do week after week. If it wasn't for your support, this would not happen. I love and appreciate you all. That is Christian. I am Brad. This is the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in. You know what to do. Until next time, be good and do good. That's it, man. We did it.
Awesome.
Thanks, dude.
Thank you.
You crushed it.